In this tutorial, we're going to wrap up the Tony's garage that we completed in class last week. You can see that we've gone in and we've put a second crate in. We've completed the pipe and we did the light fixture. And then we implied the light that was being cast by this spotlight hanging from the ceiling. So we're going to go over creating the light fixture and then implying that shadow that we see in the interior of this illustration. Now, just to reiterate how we went about creating the rest of this pipe, we had used the dodge and burn tool on our toolbar to imply that cylindrical shape that we see here. So that was done by hitting O on the keyboard and using the burn tool, which is the hand, and using the dodge tool for the lighter values. Now, before we proceed with the light fixture, you'll have to complete that pipe at some point. I've created the pipe, and now I'm going to create the light fixture, and we'll take that one step at a time. I'm going to use a new filter at the top of my layer order, and I'm going to hit M on the keyboard. I'm using the rectangle marquee to create the wire, and I'll select a thin area like so. The color that you want to use is up to you. You want to use a brown, you want to use a dark blue. It's really very subjective. I'll use the color I've got here on my completed version of this. I'm going to hit Option Delete to fill it. And then I'm going to take the marquee tool once again, and I'm going to create yet another box shape, which will be the attachment here, or perhaps how the bulb would be on the inside of this. And once again, I'll hit Option Delete to fill that. I'm now going to get my lasso tool, and I'm going to use a polygon lasso tool. It's the one with the angles. Now I'll go in and I'll create the cone shape that appears here, like so. Very subjective. I'll deselect, and of course I'm going to save. Now I'm going to have a bit of an arc here, so I've got that roundish area that would appear if we were looking down on this fixture from the ceiling perhaps. So I'm going to get the elliptical marquee, and I'm going to hold the Option key, and I'm going to click and drag from the center out to try and get that shape that I'm looking for. Moving it, and now I'll right click inside it and choose Transform Selection. Once again, I'll tweak this to fit below where I want it to go. I'll hit Return. I'm going to zoom in on this so I can get a little closer. I'll move that into position. If I need, I'll transform that again. So you'll just kind of adjust this until you get what you need to put that arc in the bottom. I'll hit Option Delete to select it, Option Delete to fill it. I'm going to zoom back, and once again I'm going to use the dodge and burn tool to add the values I want to this. So I'll hit O on the keyboard, I'll get the little hand, it's already set for mid values, I'll leave the exposure at 50, maybe I'll make my brush a little bigger. I'm going to go in and start to put some values on either side of this to make it more three-dimensional, more of a cone shape instead of a flat area. Now, in order to put a seam on this to make it a little bit more realistic, I use my polygon lasso tool and created a selection like so. And I'm going to use the dodge tool for this, and I'll leave it at 50, and I'll just kind of add a little bit of a light value to make it more three-dimensional. So I'm going to deselect and I'm going to save. Now we're ready to put the light reference in. Now that I have all the content in the file, I've got the extra crate, I've got the pipe made, I've got my light fixture. I've also gone in and I've played with the hue and saturation and the values of the pipe. I want it to be a little darker because it's going to be at the top of the document. This is purely subjective as well. But now I'm going to go to the top of my layer order here. And we're going to create this halo effect, which will make it look like our light source is pretty much coming from that fixture that we created. So I'm going to start with a new blank layer. at the very top of our layer order. And now we're going to choose a value and color that will serve our purpose. I'm going to get my eyedropper tool and I'm going to select the darker blue-gray from the pipe I have up here. Now, once again, this is also a very subjective call, but if you want to use the same color and value, you could click on your color picker on your toolbar, and if you choose, you can now punch in the color number you see in the color picker. It's 3B4250. Now, once I've got that new layer established, I'm going to fill that layer entirely with that blue by holding down the Option and hitting Delete. The first thing I want to do now is find a blend mode that I think will serve the purposes, giving me the translucence I want so I see the content below. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on my Move tool by hitting V. If I were to hold down my Shift key now, I can use plus and minus on my keyboard to quickly go through the blend modes that appear in our layer window. So I'm going to do that. And I'm probably going to stop at multiply. It's usually a good place to begin. And I'll probably, at this point, drop the opacity as well. Now, once again, this is all very subjective, the choices that you would make as a result. I'm going to drop my opacity to maybe 70%. I think I'll go with 80. Now I'm going to layer mask the shape that I want. I'm going to use my polygon lasso tool, and I'm going to establish a triangular shape very similar to the triangle shape of our light fixture, just larger. So logically, we might see something like this falling. I'll close the selection out. And because it's artificial light, I'd like this to be much softer, so I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Feather. And I'm going to make the feather 20. And now, if I were to apply my layer mask, I would be left with the dark area, but I want the opposite. So I'm going to go to Select, and I'm going to choose Inverse. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer window, and with that layer selected, I'm going to click on the layer mask icon. And now I've established that light source. Now, to make this a little bit more three-dimensional and believable, I'm going to make an arc down at the bottom, similar to the arc that's on the edge of our light. I'm going to hit M on the keyboard, and I'm going to make sure that I've got my elliptical marquee selected. I'll go down to the bottom of the file. I'm going to hold the Option key, and I'm going to click in the center of the triangle at the base of it. I'll click and drag to the right to start to establish the shape I want. Now I'm ready to layer mask this out, but once again I want to put the feather on to keep that edge consistent with the triangular light we just created with our layer mask. So I'll right click, choose Feather, 20, I'll get a brush, I'll bump the brush up to a good size so I can do this in a more expedient way, and then I'll go in and layer mask that out. Now I've established what I want as far as the main source of the light, but there would be ambient light bouncing around the inside of this document. I'm going to use my brush. I think I'll drop the size down perhaps to about 350, 400. I'm also going to drop the opacity down to about 30%. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to pull out some more light in other areas where there might be light bouncing around from other fixtures, something like this. Maybe there's up at the top, there's a skylight, and light is coming through it. And that pretty much is exactly what we were looking for.